In Genesis chapter 13, verses 3 and 4, we have a strange verse that says, "From the Negev he went from the place to place until he came to Bethel, to the place between Bethel and Ai, where his tent had been earlier, and where he built an altar. There Abraham called on the name of the Lord." I want to explain that verse to you a little bit. What do you do when you mess up? You're at work or wherever, and you might go back to, and you go back to the drawing board, or do you start from the beginning? Did you miscalculate a detail, or maybe your relationship is bruised or the trust is broken? You might go back to the person and you look for a fresh start. But what about the spiritual part? What do you do when you fall short, or you stumble, or you fall? We need to go back to the spiritual roots. That's what this verse is really talking about, getting back to the beginnings. Abraham understood this. Let me explain. Feeling the effects of a devastating drought in the region, Abraham moved his family to Egypt, but out of fear, he conspired with his wife Sarah to pretend to be his sister. And Abraham feared that the Pharaoh would have killed him to be with Sarah, so he lied, and that caused chaos. And Pharaoh decided to make Sarah his wife, but luckily God intervened, and you see, God's plan was to bring a great nation through Abraham and Sarah. And in spite of Abraham's lack of faith and his fear, God stepped in and put them back on track. So here was Abraham having failed big time in his faith, but not only did God have to bail Abraham out, but he was publicly humiliated and embarrassed by a pagan king. Is there any recovery from bad judgment that we do? Yeah, there is. We need to get back to the spiritual roots. We need to go back to our Bethels, the place where we had first worshiped the Lord, to get back to the beginning of our faith journey. When was the last time that you met a crisis? When were you overwhelmed with fear? You see, that's when you need to get back to your spiritual Bethel. The good news is, in Abraham's failure came God's redemption. The same redemption is offered to me and you. No matter what the magnitude of your mistake is, when you fail in your walk with God, when you go to God, your spiritual Bethel, where your spiritual roots are, and confess your sins to God and ask Him to forgive you, I promise you He will. And then, like Abraham, you will discover you have your relationship with God restored, and you can get that fresh start again, and you can restart with a fresh new perspective.